but I was so consumed with what people thought.
Thank you for taking the time to be here and to sit through your wife going through her interview. And he was quiet most of the time too. He didn't say hardly anything. I'm going to cut out all the part you did.
I was so engaged by her, actually. It was easy not to pipe in.
Particularly the ending. Wasn't that something?
Awesome, yeah.
My goodness. It's almost like she was prepped to do this.
I know. I had no idea where she was going to go with that answer either.
I didn't have any idea where I was going.
And I was leaving, but you pulled it all together. That was fantastic, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Listen, anyway, JP, where were you born? Oh, I know you were born. What am I talking about? You were born.
The 305, Miami, Florida. I think Stephanie and I, a lot of people move to Miami, especially from New York and the Northeast. There's very few actual native Miamians, and we're
both
two
of you were.
Yeah, both of us. Yeah.
Okay. So you grew up. How many siblings do you have?
So I'm the youngest of 5.
5. No, give me the rank from the top.
Okay, so my oldest brother's actually same parents too. So mind you, oldest brother's 18 years older than me.
8?
Yeah, my sister is 16 years older than I am, to the point where she was so motherly to me. It actually was a bit of a problem because my mom at the time was in her 40s. So I was late. Right. And then my next 2 brothers are 12 and 11 years older than I am. And then I was a big mistake 11 years later. Definitely.
Wait, so I'm gonna think ethnically your family's Italian.
Italian and Spanish. So my mom's family is from the Canary Islands, which is roughly half Spanish, half Moroccan. So kind of Northern African and Spain mixed together. Yeah. It's kind of a crazy culture. Crazy in a good and sometimes bad way. Okay. And then my dad's like a fiery Northern Italian guy. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So what was it like growing up? You were the baby, so you actually
definitely the baby. I almost grew up like an only child in some ways, yeah.
But not by your parents, by your sister.
Yeah, for sure.
She took care of you.
She did. We have an interesting story there too. So in high school, her high school, she was so fused to me that my mother actually moved her into her own apartment as a senior because, she was too attached to me. I don't think anything really, weird, but maybe my mom was weird, but so she got to do her senior year of high school in an apartment. So, I know.
Wow, are you still close to your brother and sister?
Yeah, we're very, very close. I mean, it's,
they take good care of you. You probably watched them go through some issues.
For sure. All the Toppinos have their own different set of demons.
So start telling me your story. How was it for you when you were growing up?
Okay, so you would imagine that when you have, so my oldest brother and my sister, kind of when I was growing up, were out of the house, obviously. And you would imagine that my 2 brothers closest in age to me as high school kids would not really naturally want to hang out with their 5 or 6-year-old brother. And they were so amazing, honestly. They'd take me out on dates, they'd be on a date and they'd bring their younger brother, or they'd take me out and for drives, and I get to hang out with these cool high school guys. It was really awesome, actually.
So how did you deal with the kids that were your age?
That's a great question. So I think because I was so used to hanging out with older kids that obviously I had friends and stuff, but it was much different. And my older brothers and I used to really roughhouse. So they'd get on their knees, and we all love boxing. Right. So we'd have boxing matches, and they'd all pretend to be Muhammad Ali and give me the business. And so I was maybe a little too rough for my first grade friends. So there's a little bit of that. Yeah, kind of. I think I was just joking around, and the next thing they'd be crying. Right. So we had to be careful with play dates. So yeah.
And your parents treated you, of course, as being the baby.
Yeah, I was I was the princeling of the family.
Did they tell you how much you were getting away with, your older brothers and sisters?
Yeah, for sure. And as I got older, Steph says, I was raised by wolves, but the reality is, my parents, my parents were in their late 50s when I was in high school, and lucky for them, I'm the least wild of my 4 other siblings. So, had my older brother been raised like me, it would have been game over. He might have killed somebody. Yeah, exactly. So
that is interesting. Yeah. How are mom and dad doing?
So sadly, because they're so much older and not in great health, my mom passed away my freshman year of university. And it's fine. And then my dad kind of right before we got married. Oh. So when I was in my late 20s.
Okay, but you got to know both of them.
Yeah.
Well.
We had a fantastic relationship, and there's some things that are difficult, but kind of formative for me. So my senior year of high school was actually spent, driving my mom to her cancer treatments and stuff like that. And it sounds horrible, but like actually the closeness that creates,
Did your brothers and sisters feel jealous of you because you were close?
I don't know about that. I mean, they were really good. Like wherever they were in their lives, they were always back in Miami. So two of my brothers lived in Los Angeles, and my sister and older brother were in northern Florida. But I mean, we as a family probably spent more time all together then than at any other point.
Okay.
Actually.
And that was because of who went first? Your mother?
My mom. So my mom went my freshman year of university. So Steph said we had this interesting college career where I was at two different schools. So I did my first year in Miami, not at University of Miami, but at a school called Florida International University. And I was going to play baseball. My mom was sick. She wound up passing away, so I stopped playing. I quit almost like before the season even started. So like, I did like the first semester of practice and then never played. And then I moved to University of Florida right at like a year, like for my sophomore year. Was there for 2 years, and then my dad had a heart attack, which he survived, but he needed help running the business. So I did my senior year again at FIU, and that's where I wound up getting my degree from, which actually it's a great school, so it's no problem. But like my senior year of university was actually kind of interesting. I took all of my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays so I could work full time for my dad Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
What did he do?
He had a construction company.
Okay. And constructing what?
Kind of interesting. So at various points, different things. So my family built all the bridges from Miami to the Florida Keys. So it started with my grandfather, and then my uncles do that business. So my dad started as a bridge contractor. He moved to Miami, went out of the family business, started building houses and hotels. And then when I was in college and came back and worked, we were actually building prefabricated, so modular jails and schools. So you can imagine like there's overcrowding in schools, so they need like auxiliary buildings that you could put up quickly. So that was kind of what we were doing.
Prefab.
And this idiotic 21-year-old who happened to be pretty good at math, but didn't know anything about construction, was doing all the pricing, because at least once I knew how to read set of plans, I was pretty good at calculating what was needed and all of that stuff.
Wow.
So it was kind of cool. So it definitely helped for sure.
What did your brother and your sister study? What were they?
So my oldest brother basically studied judo and how to be a drug dealer, as far as I can tell. So he's still with us. He's 70, and my brother Charlie and I have been paying for him for the last like 15 years, like literally. My wife's like rolling her eyes right now.
Paying for him?
Like for all his living costs, because we don't want him to be a drug dealer, and he doesn't
I
really
hear.
have any other skills necessarily.
I hear.
And then my sister got married pretty young to a family friend. So her husband, and they've been married 40 years, I think. She got married at like 23 or 4. He's a bit older. I think he was like 36 or 37 when they got married. He's now in his early 80s, and my sister's in her late 60s and literally looks 40.
He's taking good care of her.
He's taking good care of her.
He's taking good care of her.
And she's taking good care of him too. So they're awesome.
How many kids do they have?
They have 3 boys.
3 boys.
And they're closer in age to me than my own siblings. So they are basically the oldest is only 8 years younger than me, and they're the ultimate Irish twins. So 8, 9, and 10 years younger than me. And then my closest brother in age is 11 years older than me.
So did you grow up with them?
I did grow up with them. I kind of consider them my brothers also. And we spent a lot of time together. They're probably honestly.
So that's how she got to be able to keep you as one of her kids.
For sure. And right. So they were in northern Florida.
Called them number 1.
Exactly.
I'm seeing, that is interesting.
Yeah. Pretty cool. And we have my nephews and I, so I have this joke, which is not really a joke. Okay. I'm a gregarious person who has a lot of acquaintances, but not that many close friends. Right. So I always say I have 9 friends and they're my friends, right? And my nephews are 3 of them, so there's not a lot of room. And I've had one of my best friends passed away. So the older brother of her best friend, he had a motorcycle accident. But I've had the same 3 best friends since I was like 9, 8. Yeah, so like 40 something years. So yeah.
So who do you think really stimulated your family to be close as they are? Or what do you think made you decide to have a family that would be close?
I think it's conditioning. Like I was raised that way, and we have
What was the
we have a wide variety. Like
Okay.
so I told you I have my older brother who's like a mess and has always been, right, and then my sister who been married for 40 something years, has great kids, really great marriage, but has also had her own struggles. The brother who's next in age to me actually founded a part of the company that I still work for. So he's very successful. And then my brother just above him, who probably I was the closest with, that in my mind, passed away. So that was actually also formative. So rules to the Toppinos. We don't have cancer in our family, but if you smoke, you're going to get lung cancer and die. So
that's something that's really
yeah, that definitely happens in my family. And if you don't,
Well, do
you're
you
pretty
smoke?
no way. I mean, even though there's a big spread in age, it's almost made us closer in some ways because we didn't have, like I look at Stephanie's relationship with her sister, and there's a lot of, I think typical sibling like fighting with each other, which I see with my kids. I didn't really have that because my brothers and sisters are so much older.
They're always protecting you.
Right, exactly. So I didn't have the, he's a pain in the butt or whatever.
Yeah. So how did that affect you? I'm wondering. So with your kids,
No.
what was your position more with the kids? Who was the disciplinarian?
Definitely my wife. Definitely my wife.
Even with your sons.
Yeah, I would say there's things that you can't cross, like be disrespectful to an adult or disrespectful to your mom,
Right.
and you come across me. But because the way I was raised or not raised, as Stephanie would say, I didn't have, like my rules in high school were call if you weren't coming home. Not, like what was your curfew? My curfew was tomorrow, but don't scare your parents. I grew up in Miami, which is actually a pretty violent city. So if you didn't call and didn't come
and
home.
Also, you're so young.
Yeah.
Your parents were already.
Yeah.
There's 5 of you, right?
Yep.
So they already had 4.
Right, and they had 4 terrors, man.
One, we lose one. Hey, we're good.
Exactly, we got plenty, man.
That was not how I was raised.
I know because there's 2 of you.
Right,
and
so
everyone was on your case.
So we still have, we have like a mismatch of how we were raised, and Steph, after her father left, it's really a house full of girls, and even though I have a sister who's kind of the disciplinarian of my life, she's a guy. That's what's so cool about her. She's like,
brothers.
right, she's definitely a guy, which is kind of like what my daughter is like that too. You can tell that she's
She can
raised
bring it
with
on.
like 2 rough boys
Right.
because that's what she is.
Yeah, bring it on. She said,
Exactly.
bring it on. Come
Exactly.
on.
Yeah. That of my siblings, my sister's the one you don't want to cross.
That's right.
Honestly,
She said,
man.
bring it on, yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. So what were you interested in when you were young?
Uh,
Your brothers are taking you out. See, I'm trying to figure out what kind of lifestyle you had. Your brothers are taking you to senior things
Right.
that you'd have to be a teenager to get involved with.
yeah.
And you're still an adolescent, basically.
Well,
You
almost
were.
a child.
A child,
honestly.
yeah.
Like I remember visiting my brothers when they were in university. So my older brother, my brother who's second closest in age, David, played soccer at a school called Mercer in Georgia. But he had a long-term girlfriend at the same time, so he lived with his girlfriend. And I remember, I was like 10. And he'd smoke these really funny smelling cigarettes, which he called cherry cigarettes, but obviously they were joints. And so I did have like this interesting thing, and I'm like this sheltered boy from Miami.
What year is this? What year are we talking?
We were probably talking like 1980, 81, 82, like in there.
He didn't try to get you to smoke it.
No, of course not.
Okay,
Of course not.
But he was smoking it.
But
around
he
you.
definitely
So
didn't care that I was around because these are cherry cigarettes, man. Because I knew smoking was bad, but these weren't. And he was just an early adopter because they weren't bad, actually.
That's right. Okay. My goodness.
So I had like experiences like that, and they took, I was there, and he took me to his, friends had this lake house in Georgia, and I'd never, been water skiing in a lake in Georgia. Like it's like all these
How
kind
old-
of.
How old are you?
This is like same 10, 11, 12, like just a kid, man.
When did you start driving?
Legally when I was like 15,
No,
but
I mean before. When
oh
did
yeah,
you
like
get
my family let me drive as soon as I could like actually safely reach the pedals and stuff. Yeah. So probably realistically, well, I can barely reach the pedals now, but 10, 11, 12, same time. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you remember doing that you really enjoyed outside of meeting your wife that you have now? That was a highlight in your life.
That was the highlight in my life. So it's interesting, like, she told you our origin story,
Right,
which is,
right.
definitely Florida style.
So let's hear it from your viewpoint.
Okay, so from my viewpoint, Steph will say that she didn't like me at all in high school, like literally didn't like me. I probably had a indifference too strong of a word. Like Stephanie was my best friend's younger sister, one of her best friends. So Amy Bloom, who I'm still really close to because that was part of my family. Like Charlie was my best friend and Amy was his little sister, and that was the house you hung out with. So I always knew Stephanie and I had no opinion. I just thought she was one of, my best friend's little sister's friends. So I didn't have a negative opinion. I didn't have much opinion. When our parents started dating, I thought it was a bit weird, but I kind of, because I'm from like a family that's close, I think I feel like I made an effort, and her sister Jennifer and I think got pretty close immediately, or at least she definitely didn't hate me. I didn't realize Stephanie's strong feelings until she let it be known several months later.
Oh,
but
really? Yeah, really? So when you approached her, you didn't?
Yeah,
you thought she was as chilled as you were.
Yeah, kind of, and like
Well, how did she tell you? How did you find out that she was?
Well, she'd like not show up to like dinners. Like I'd cook for Susan, who's her mom, and my dad sometimes, because we were like in this it was summer, so I lived, and our parents lived together, so that's where I lived in the summer. So like I'd cook them dinner, and then Steph wouldn't be at dinner, and then it became pretty obvious she didn't want to be around, and my friend. Stephanie's mom loves my friends who also used to come over for dinner and just hang out and drink beers with my dad.
Right.
And then Steph would never be there. So it's becoming clear. There's a couple turning points after spending a lot of time with each other. She talked about that dinner party we threw for her mom. But we also have pretty similar sense of humor. Steph's a lot smarter than I am, but we could have, I think, relative to the boyfriends that she had, I was a lot smarter than them. And so we wound up getting closer. We watched God, what was the movie? The Peter Sellers Dr. Strangelove, which is kind of a cult classic, and I think she was shocked that it was one of my favorite movies, which is kind of funny. You can tell how hungover I couldn't even remember what it was called. And she's like, "Oh man!" And then we started watching movies and hanging out together a lot more, and then. One fateful trip to Daytona Beach for one of my nephew's bar mitzvahs. We tried it on for size. It was pretty. I thought it fit pretty well.
That's good. That's good.
So, and
sweet.
I think she may have thought it was like a one-time thing. I didn't. I mean, I because of the couple years that we'd spent together, I did realize that Stephanie was obviously a lot more interesting, more engaging. Than people that I dated up till then.
You saw this, you knew that was going to be the one?
I didn't know if I'd be the one, but I definitely knew that was somebody that I wanted to spend time with and get to know and see if it went.
When did you know she was the one? When did you decide, hey? Did you ask her to be your wife?
Yeah, for sure. But it took a long time. But also, we were really young at the time. But I would say within like 6 months of kind of dating each other. So we started dating when I was 21 and she was 20.
Okay.
And then at that time, I'd come back from University of Florida, and she was still there. So we had 5 or 6 hours of driving distance between us. So we didn't see each other a lot until kind of that following summer and that year. And then I started working immediately. I was fortunate enough to get a job, and then she had her senior.
What about your father's company?
No, by that time I'd moved into kind of real estate finance. So I'm actually still working. There's been a lot of evolutions over time, but I'm like the typical Japanese employee, and then I started with a company called Secured Capital in the United States in 1993. So I was 22 years old. And until we merged with my current company, which is called PAG, I was the president of Secured Capital Japan in 2011, which is a public company in Japan. So that's 18 years in the same company. And then PAG, which is my current company, is just a merger of Pacific Alliance and Secured Capital Japan. So theoretically, I've had a career that started in 1993 with the same company. So coming on 30 years.
Did your position change?
Yeah, well, I started as a most junior analyst.
Right.
And I'm the group president of a company that has 800 employees now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's changed a
No,
lot.
but I mean, but when you were with the company before it merged, you were the president.
Yeah, I was the president yeah, now I have 3. It's a little different. So I was definitely the top person
Right,
of
the
Secured Capital Japan.
Right.
Now I'm in a partnership with 3 other people. So we have a real estate business, which obviously I run. We have a hedge fund business that one of my other partners runs, and we have a private equity business. So we have 3 partners that
So you have
manage it.
autonomy with your area. I understand.
Yeah.
Your whole area.
And
is
then
your
we
area.
run the business as a partnership,
I see.
which has been great, honestly. A little less
How
pressure.
how much longer do you think you'll be doing this? Do you see that, or do you ever see it ending?
Yeah, I can definitely see it ending. Like in my life goals, kind of 50-52 was the time that I was going to transition to do, do a little bit more charity, maybe start up a restaurant for high-risk youth. Realistically, we've got
For what?
For high-risk youth.
High risk, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of my passion and my goal. I think that's probably 3 or 4 years away, and I'm really hoping that I still have enough energy.
But how old are you now?
Huh?
How old are you?
52. So
52.
I'm still quite young, but
Right.
that's a very challenging job. Like it's physically
think so.
demanding, right? It's a little different.
And you want to? So you're talking about going back to the States in order to do that?
Yeah,
Oh, so you are going to be leaving?
at some point for sure.
Oh.
Yeah, so right now,
Yeah.
our lives are kind of 7-8 months in what I call Asia, because I don't spend all my time in Japan. I spend Singapore and Hong Kong too, but in Asia, and 4 or 5 months in the U.S. So we're 3 months over the summer, a month over the Christmas holidays, and then usually another half a month over time. I think it will just flip to where I'm in Asia 5 months and in the U.S. 7 months. I got to talk to my partners about that, so I'm not going to put them on this podcast.
Because you're not going to put them on the podcast.
No, I'm not going to let them see the podcast.
How can you stop them? Maybe you shouldn't talk. Wait, do you want that to be in? Or?
No, I'm kidding. No,
Okay,
totally
okay,
fine.
I'm sorry.
So basically, it'll
Okay,
just
good.
flip-flop the time. And COVID made it a lot easier for me to figure out
course.
how my company ran with me not around all the time. So
Because prior to that, you were actually just hitting the office, going to the office, going to the
Yeah,
office. But COVID made you see that you could actually run it and do it online.
run it a little bit more remotely. I mean,
Right.
and I think I'm pretty disciplined, honestly. It's no problem for me to be in Colorado and make sure I'm blocking kind of that afternoon, evening time, which gives me 5 or 6 hours with Asia. And if I don't have people running into my office all the time, I can do 10 hours of work in like 4 hours in a descriptive kind of way like that. So
So what happened with your father? I'm just curious about your
Yep.
father, the construction company. Did you maintain that, or did you guys end
no,
up?
we wound up folding it up. I mean, he wound up passing away suddenly, but even then he was kind of, we were winding it down because my dad was late 60s. I don't really want to work. That's a hard business. Like it's physically hard. So I mean, even though he's not the guy slinging
but he has to be around
the
to-
5-pound
exactly.
sledge and stuff,
But he
you're
has to
still
be
walking around, right? And you're on
That's right.
forklift and you're doing all that stuff. So we were kind of winding it down anyway. So
So where are you at right now? You just summed up where you are
Yeah.
right now. Where you're going to be going. Let me ask you this.
yep,
This is how I usually wind up
Yep.
the podcast. You heard me ask your wife.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you now. Being the baby of the family.
Yeah.
My goodness. And you're raised by not your mother so much,
Yeah.
more or less your sister.
my older sister. Yeah.
Did you start calling your sister mommy?
No, I would never. That's too disrespectful to my mom.
I
don't
know,
you
but,
think?
but your mom was stepping in. That's why she put it away.
Yeah, I don't think that happened when I was like 1, so I'm assuming I wasn't doing that. But I do feel like there was probably, at least from my mother's perspective, an unhealthy bond
I
there
hear.
that's like was a little too close.
Right, right.
It's really good though with my mom gone that I have that kind of relationship
still
with
have
my
that-
sister.
oh, that's
So
good,
I
yeah.
still have like somebody, that I can call up and
Anytime, yeah. you
come
really
complain
get-
about my wife too.
Somebody give you a woman's side of it.
Exactly.
I'd go from that end.
Exactly.
If you were to go back in time,
Yeah.
and you can pick the time,
Yeah.
knowing what you know now, what kind of advice would you give the young?
Okay, so I'm gonna go way back because I was, and this probably explains why my wife didn't like me in high school. I was not nice. Like I thought I was really cool, and I was baseball player, football player, the smart jock. But I was actually quite mean to people and a little bit of a bully, not like terribly, but a bit. Looking back,
What age are you?
17 to even the first couple years of college, and it definitely coincides with my mom being sick and stuff. I think it unleashed some anger in me, but I was so consumed with what people thought, and actually I know that they thought I was an asshole, but I thought they maybe thought I was the coolest guy ever. I would go back and tell that kid to be yourself, because I think I was a very late bloomer. I think Steph taking a chance on me, even when I was like 21 and turning the corner a bit, that happened right after my family gave me literally like a sit down of, you can't drink like this, you can't get in fights, you're an adult now. Literally like an intervention.
So who was it? Who was doing this?
My 3 brothers, including the really bad one, and my dad. And without like, I will tell you, I can't give you any things that I would change from the point I met Stephanie. This sounds really corny, I know, but she changed my life in a great way. And I feel like there's 4 or 5 years there where I wasn't the person that I am. I'm not that person, but I was probably unilaterally awful. Luckily, I have the same best friends, and they kind of were able to live through it. So I would go back and tell that guy, just be yourself, be a nice human being, and
You turned out to be fantastic.
I hope so. It's kind of funny. There's a girl who I was not nice to, like just like, she wasn't very attractive, and I was really mean to her. And I found her on Facebook, and really, I think, gave her a very heartfelt apology. And I think it made a huge difference for me, and I hope that it made a difference for her. So,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
thanks, brother.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thanks,
That's
man.
why you hug the way you do every time you see people.
Yeah.
You're one of the guys that see every time you want to.
Yeah, I always
want
want to hug
you
somebody.
Pull it in.
In fact,
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Make sure you press like and subscribe. And never forget, it's all on loan. So continue to reach for the stars, because you're too blessed to be stressed.